Hello and welcome to this review of the Capcom Home Arcade. This is a premium product retailing at $199.99 here in the UK, which is rather expensive considering you can buy a PlayStation 4 console for a mere £10 more on Amazon. That's quite substantial, I think you'll agree. But for your money, you get 16 vintage Capcom arcade games, including Alien vs Predator appearing for the first time ever on a home machine, and Capcom Sports Club, which is a personal favourite. Now, I don't actually do emulation, so all of this stuff is new to me, and I gotta say, I love it. These play brilliantly. Also, for your money, you're getting 2 sets of Sanwa arcade stick hardware with 6 buttons each, as well as a coin insert button and one to pause the game. I think it looks great, and I can only imagine what I'd pay for a system in the shape of the Sega logo, so if you love Capcom, I'd say this is a very desirable product. The firmware version installed in this review unit that I received from Koch Media was the same as that running on the preview units when I tested it in London a couple of weeks ago, so there are no surprises here. I didn't mention at the time the legal notice, which stresses that the emulation code is open source. Now that's something that's caused some controversy on the internet because open source code isn't supposed to be used for commercial gain, though I suppose you could argue that you're actually paying for the hardware and the license to play Capcom's built-in games, not for the emulator code itself. So let's go with that. Now, while I'm full of praise for actually playing the unit, I have to say that outside of the games, the user interface really isn't that great. While the main game selection menu is certainly functional enough, if perhaps a little ugly, if you delve further into the menus, it starts to get very clunky. Using the stick to input your Wi-Fi password just takes far longer than it should, with the cursor taking ages to move and not responding properly to your control inputs. It's really bizarre. There are also no save states, and no options to set dip switches. Now you could argue that's a bit like having free play access to an arcade that someone else owns, which is kind of cool, but really, if you've paid this much to buy the unit yourself, you own this arcade, so you should get the choice, but you don't. The final problem that I found with the UI is that if you're going back to the main game selection from within a game, it seems to reboot the entire thing with the Koch Media and Capcom splash screens, which just takes too long. It should just go straight back to the list of games, but it doesn't. But maybe they'll fix that in a future firmware update. In terms of playing the unit in a living room situation instead of that lovely arcade-esque setup that I sampled in London, it's actually surprisingly uncomfortable to balance it on your lap, at least with one player, as the unit is pretty heavy and it starts to pivot on your right leg. If you get something under it, preferably another person, it feels just fine, but it is the kind of thing you might want to mount in a more permanent position, like having an arcade in your house. The games themselves look way better on my HD TV than the Neo Geo mini games do, with gorgeous, clean-looking pixels on the default setting. The smoothing option isn't actually worth bothering with in my opinion, although I would say that I couldn't replicate that strange screen tearing phenomenon that I saw at the preview event. It's just a bit blurry here, but otherwise it does work just fine. The game selection is very strong with a lot of genres covered, but with Wi-Fi connectivity, there's actually potential for more games to be added at a later date, which would be very welcome. Nothing's been confirmed at this stage though, and the same goes for the mysterious USB socket on the back. With the current firmware, this doesn't act as a fight stick if you plug it into other consoles, so at present this USB port has no purpose. Most odd. But when you're judging it on what you do get, I was convinced enough to pre-order one at full price after just 3 hours with the unit, and extra playtime with this review unit has only made me like it more. Basically, the UI only matters for those few moments when you're outside of the games, and then you're in, and you're playing some wonderful, classic arcade titles on free play. It's a dream come true for any child of the 80s, and modern gamers would probably learn something too from these games because they value fun and immediacy over longevity and collectibles, and yet there is plenty of depth in here for those who had deep pockets back in the day. You may well need deep pockets today too, but I still believe it's worth it. This is a really high quality piece of kit and it's so much fun. So while it does lose a star for its high price point, poor UI and rather diminutive game selection, I still give it 4 out of 5. It's recommended by me. Well, thanks very much for watching. If you want to hear more about the games themselves, then do check out my preview video, as there's loads of extra information in there. Please hit like and subscribe, and take care until next time. I'll see you soon. Cheers.